let's actually dive into our first privacy policy, Signal. Signal is a smaller privacy policy, which is why I want to start with this one. They do encrypted messaging. I generally am pretty optimistic about this company. They are a nonprofit organization. The way that we're going to be handling some things right up front is if data is collected, like if it's optionally collected, if the thing will pop up and say, hey, do you want to share this type of information or whatever? We're going to assume worst case scenario for the average user if that they click yes on everything that pops up in front of them. So data that is collected, even if optional, we're going to assume it is collected. We're going to be sorting things by this privacy visualizer. Blue is collected data. Orange will be data that is shared. And then red will be data that is sold. And we're going with the sold definition by the California Consumer Privacy Act, CCPA. We're going to go down here to the bottom, terms and privacy policy. For now, we're just going to be reviewing privacy policies as it is what I am more familiar with. Privacy policy. Signal utilizes state-of-the-art security and end-to-end encryption to provide private messaging and internet calling services to users worldwide. When we see the parentheses services, that's what they define their services as. So your calls and messages are always encrypted so that they can never be shared or viewed by anyone but yourself and the intended recipients. Information that you provide. Account information. You register your phone number when you create a Signal account. All right, so we have our first piece of information that is collected. So if we look at the privacy visualizer, contact info will contain phone number. So we're going to mark that contact info. And we can see that we're just doing collected data right now. So yeah. Phone numbers are used to provide our services to you and other Signal users. You may optionally add other information to your account, such as a profile name and a profile picture. This information is end-to-end encrypted. Now, this gets a little bit weird because that could be considered either an identifier or user content. Profile name and a profile picture would fit under identifiers a little bit more. And then they actually link to their end-to-end encryption guide and like how it works and everything, which is very cool. Alrighty, messages. Signal cannot decrypt or otherwise access the content of your messages or calls. Signal queues end-to-end encrypted messages on its servers for delivery to delivery that are temporarily offline. So for example, a phone's whose battery has died. Your message history is stored on your own devices. So this essentially means that they do technically have an encrypted version of your message on their servers temporarily when the recipient cannot receive the message. We're going to call that user content. It is encrypted, but I still want to count it. Again, I'm going to be pretty harsh on these, and we're going to count basically worst case scenario for all of these companies. Additional information is stored on the servers, including randomly generated authentication tokens, keys, push tokens, and other materials that are necessary to establish calls and transmit messages. Signal limits this additional technical information to the minimum required to operate the services. So, like I said, that last one definitely makes sense for how the service works. We're going to consider that still user content. I also clicked identifiers too many times. My bad. Signal can optionally discover which contacts in your address book are Signal users using a service designed to protect the privacy of your contacts. This obviously means that they do collect contact information, potentially. And I think it's super worth calling out that Signal does actually have some really good privacy settings to not have yourself be visible to people that do enable this feature, which I think is a really good thing. Most services do not do that. So they, like I said, this is an optional thing that they can collect, and I think that's worth calling out, but they do handle it better than most, which I also think is worth calling out, but we're going to mark it. So I'm marking it. Information from the contacts on your device may be cryptographically hashed and transmitted to the server in order to determine which of your contacts are registered. Again, they have a lovely guide here that goes into detail as to how that works, which is really cool. I love that. User support. If you contact user support, Signal user support, any personal data you may share with us is kept only for the purposes of researching the issue and contacting you about your case. This does fit into user content because they'll oftentimes ask for screenshots to validate what the issue is and things like that. And then managing information, you can manage your personal data in Signal's application settings. For example, you can update your profile information or choose to enable additional privacy features like registration lock pin, which you should do. Please do that. Information we may share. All right, here's where things get fun. Information we may share. third parties. We work with third parties to provide you some of our services. For example, our third-party providers send a verification code to your phone number who are registered through our service. You may notice they don't specify what third-party service this actually is, which means I can't read the privacy policy of this third-party service provider to send these text messages. I don't love that. So, unfortunately, we need to consider contact info shared data. These providers are bound by their privacy policies. Again, the fact that they don't link them is a little upsetting to me. I really wish they would improve that to safeguard your information. If you use other third-party services like YouTube, Spotify, Giphy, etc., in connection with our services, their terms of policies govern your use of those services. So this last one means, like, if you share a YouTube video through Signal and it generates a preview and you watch the video through the preview window, technically you're watching YouTube through Signal. I think this is fair game to call out, like, hey, you need to read the privacy policies of those services individually because it is their service. Signal is essentially just a window to that service at this point. But this one, there's a very clear difference. This one is used for the function of the service, whereas this one, you can not send YouTube videos or watch YouTube videos. I think that one is reasonably in the way that it's phrased, and I kind of hope you understand why I have phrased it the way that I have. Other instances where Signal may need to share your data to meet any applicable laws, regulation, or legal process or enforceable governmental request. Now, this one's interesting because there have been cases where the government has requested Signal data and all they were able to really provide was timestamps. Signal doesn't actually have a lot of data to give, which is good. Again, investigations of personal violations, this gets into their terms and conditions. So to detect, prevent, or otherwise address fraud, security, or technical issues, again, that makes sense. This is kind of normal for these kinds of services. And then to protect harm against the rights, property, or safety of Signal, our users, or the public as required as permittable by law. Updates. We will update this privacy policy as needed so it is current, accurate, as clear as possible. Here's where I get angry. I don't know if you get angry about this. Your continued use of our service confirms your acceptance of our updated privacy policy. They don't notify you that an update has occurred to a privacy policy. Now, granted, Signal is actually going to be the oldest privacy policy that we will look at today. Just you using it assumes that you agree to it. So, yeah, that is essentially the Signal privacy policy.